Today, I want to welcome Kelly Dick from Be Well. Kelly is a certified traditional doctor of naturopathy, a nationally board certified holistic health practitioner, and an active member of the American Association of Natural Wellness Practitioners. She is the practitioner and co-owner of Be Well, where she specializes in balancing the body through natural means and has worked with numerous clients and their families on such things as troubleshooting chronic issues, overcoming digestive distress, identifying food sensitivities, and many other pursuits of reaching one's wellness goals. So before she gets started, I will just go over the format today. We will introduce ourselves and then have Kelly talk for a while and then have time for connection and questions. Okay, well, we will turn it over to you, Kelly. Are you ready to get started?
I am, and thank you so much for my introduction. I am also a mom. I have two beautiful children, ages 4 and 2, and I am very, very lucky that we have been on a wellness journey, and probably one of the greatest compliments I get as a mom is when people will look at me and go, wow, your kids will eat anything, because they do. We love exploring food and we love exploring nutrition. But just quick, a little background on me. I haven't always been this person. I haven't always been the one who eats well and lives well and has body balance. As a matter of fact, it was just 10 short years ago that I was told by doctors that I had 6 months to live. I had spent 3 years in and out of doctors. I actually moved to Charlotte in 2010 from Charleston, South Carolina, although I am originally a Yankee. Don't hate me. But I moved here in 2010, and shortly after my move to Charlotte, I found myself getting very, very sick. I found myself having all sorts of random symptoms and issues and problems. And by the time I was done, it was about 2 years in and out of doctors and specialists. I was on 13 different prescriptions. I was seeing a different doctor every day. I had literally spent over 10% of my income on medical bills. And just really trying to figure out what was going wrong. And that's when I was introduced to holistic healthcare. One of the specialists told me I had about 6 months until my body would shut down and I'd be permanently hospitalized. And several of my friends kept telling me about this doctor that they were seeing and how he was amazing. And I was like, wow, those holistic people are weird. Like, they eat tree bark and munch on berries for fun. Like, who does that? And well, now I'm somebody who does that, not tree bark. Tree bark is a totally different ballgame, but I do love my berries, and my whole world has changed. Obviously, I'm alive and well. I have 2 beautiful children when I was told I would never have children, and I never spent a day in the hospital other than to birth them. So this is a journey that's been near and dear to my heart. And so as we talk about this today, know that it is not something that I take lightly, and it's not something that I think is just naturally born into people. I think one of the hardest things that we have as parents and as moms especially is that we are sort of brought into the world of having children with this background like, oh, the baby's going to come out and you're just naturally going to be this amazing mom. And it doesn't work like that. They don't come with an instruction manual. We don't get years of practice until they get here. We get 9 months to get our minds and our hearts in the right place. And then we kind of wing it from there. And so this is my opportunity and my hope that today I would give you a little piece of the years and years of education that I've gone through since being ill. I went back to school. I got my doctorate. I received several other certifications, and I'm actually in the pursuit of more as we speak. So I figure I can take all the work that I've done, all the years and the money and the time and the practice that I've put into this, and at least give you a small taste of it for you to take home in your own knowledge and your own little version of an instruction manual. So for me, one of the inspirations that I'm here is that one of the things I found when I was sick is that food can easily become one of 2 things. It can easily be the most powerful form of medicine in your body, or it can be the slowest form of poison. And that doesn't mean that we should be afraid of food by any means, but it does mean that what we put in our body matters. As a matter of fact, most people nowadays believe that health is really about genetics. They talk about it all the time. I have this gene, I have that gene, I have this gene. But the truth is, when we study it scientifically, when we look at the role of genetics in the human body, it's actually 98% of what influences your health is based on your lifestyle, and only 2% is based on genetics. So are genetics important? Absolutely. But is what you pick and choose, is what you do day to day for yourself and your children a big deal? Way more so. So today we're going to talk about that. And the interesting thing is the things that apply to our children's nutrition are oftentimes things that are best applied to us as well. As a parent, the most crucial thing you can do is be the example. Live the things you're telling them to do. Don't ask them to eat a bell pepper while you're chomping on an Oreo, right? Because otherwise, if they're anything like my child, she's going to point it out. She loves to ask me, Mommy, why do I have to do that? Or, Mommy, why aren't you eating what I'm eating? And most of the time, I'm not eating what she's eating because I'm not hungry. But we do eat all of our family meals together. And so oftentimes she'll say, well, Mommy, I want what's on your plate. And I get to explain to her, we all eat the same things because we all have bodies that need to be fueled and taken care of. So today we're going to cover a few of these things to make your lives easier, to make their lives easier, and really to help us gain a grasp on what is the best way to approach nutrition in our children. The first thing we're going to talk about are what are the 5 elements to children eating well. Then we'll talk about throughout this why they're important, how to practically apply these changes, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers because I'm sure there'll be plenty, and it's my joy to educate and empower the people I work with in making the right choices for you and your family. And that's another thing I want to point out real quick before I dive into this. Yes, we're going to talk about 5 elements that apply to children eating well, but every family is unique. Nothing I tell you is meant to shame you about the way you've been feeding your children. It's not meant to make you question your role as a parent. It is simply meant to educate, and then you get to use that information how you choose. I want to empower you to make the choices not only that are best for your family, but that you're most comfortable with. Because every day is a journey, and I want to be on that journey with you, not making that journey harder. So let's talk about why food matters. Food matters because nutrition is not a game of calories in versus calories out. I know as moms, we talk a lot about this. As dads, we talk a lot about this. If we move more and eat less, we'll be skinny, we'll be healthy. But the reality is, it's about quality of food. It's quality of calories. There is a huge difference between a Snickers and a Diet Coke being 100 calories or a handful of almonds being 500 calories. 500 calories sounds like a lot, but when it's almonds, it's fueling your system. When it's a Snickers and a Diet Coke, it's a totally different ballgame. Our food is fuel, and we need to treat it like that. And one of the key elements to remember, if you take nothing else away from today, if it's not a naturally occurring food, try to avoid it, because naturally occurring foods, the things that grow in nature and are raised on farms, are things that our body uses differently than those things that come in a package. All right, so what are the 5 elements to healthy eating for children and adults? The first one, we want to talk about limiting grains and gluten. The second one we'll talk about is reducing sugar. The third is reducing toxins. And of course, we can't just talk about avoiding things or running away from things. We have to talk about what can we put in their place, and that is eating more vegetables and increasing our healthy fats. So let's get started right with the first one, reducing grains and gluten, or limiting grains and gluten. In simple terms, grains are very difficult for the body to process. They naturally cause inflammation in the body and in the digestive tract. And this is a big deal for children, because if your children are like 90% of children, constipation is a very common and a very real issue for children. Not only are they dealing with the physical aspects of it, But when we get into the world of potty training for small kids, or public restrooms for older kids, there's a lot of emotional ties to it. And those things are things that we oftentimes as parents can't control. They're things that our children need to learn on their own and experience on their own. So from a nutritional side, it's very important that we do everything we can to support their digestive tract and remove inflammation so that their body is able to do what they need to do, and the rest is a different form of journey. When our body is inflamed, it causes us to work hard but achieve little. And when you really dig into how the digestive tract works, many of you may have heard that the digestive tract, your gut, is your second brain. So much of how our body functions comes from that area that it's really important that we keep the inflammation down and the function and balance of that area up. And one of the ways to do it is by reducing the foods that cause massive inflammation there, like grains and glutens, breads, pastas, rices, quinoa, even things that can be healthy, like whole grains, still have the potential to create that inflammation. Why is this a big deal? Because we are finding that more and more people are sensitive to these things in ways that we never imagined. About 1% of the population currently have celiac disease. Celiac disease is an inflammatory response that causes the body to be unable to absorb nutrients throughout the digestive tract. Now, 1% is a small population, but we also find that about 6% of the population have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. 13% of the population report a non-medically designated gluten sensitivity. And 100% of studies of healthy controls show that prolonged exposure to excessive gluten cause gut permeability. In layman's terms, that means that 100% of people who eat too many grains and too many gluten-based foods can eventually develop leaky gut. So for you, that means that there's a 50% chance that you or one of your 9 closest friends has some sort of sensitivity to glutens and grains. So for kids, this is extremely important. It's also important to know that kids are not necessarily born with a full colony of probiotics, bacteria in their gut. Now, we say bacteria and people tend to think that that's a bad thing. But when it comes to probiotic and prebiotic, those are actually the things that keep our gut balanced and help our digestive tract to run positively, making sure that we eliminate after every meal. Yes, I paid a lot of money to get a doctorate, to become a parent, and spend most of my time in both my personal and professional life to talking about how often do we poop. But it is the most common conversation that I have with clients these days, because if we don't really focus on that good bacteria in our gut, everything in our body can be set off. And since children are not born with that full colony, one of the importance of their nutrition is developing that and making sure we keep inflammation down and developmental process. So we avoid or limit the amount of glutens and grains we have in their diet. The American Standard Diet tells us that every plate should have carbohydrates, vegetables, and proteins on their plate, right? Actually, the American Standard Diet says it should be grains, fruits and vegetables, and protein. But the reality is carbohydrates can just as well come from vegetables and actually process better through the body than glutens and grains. So for me and my studies and the people that I work with who are dealing with digestive distress, food sensitivities, chronic issues, or even just trying to troubleshoot little things like why their child has eczema, we really focus on carbohydrates coming from fruits and vegetables and our fuel coming from proteins and healthy fats. All right, so that's why we limit grains and gluten. Now let's talk about the not so easy one, reducing sugar. If your kids are like mine, they love sugar. They gravitate towards sugar. Sugar is everything they want to focus on when they get the opportunity. But here's a quick reality check. The average American consumes 27 teaspoons of sugar a day. Why is that a big deal? Because the American Association of Pediatrics, as well as the American Heart Association, says that children should have no more than 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. An average female should have no more than 6 or 7 teaspoons of sugar a day. That means, as Americans, we are consuming triple what is healthy for us in a day. That's big. And sugar has a lot of impact on the body. It suppresses the immune system. It has the ability to feed diseases like cancer and other things. And it increases the risk of heart disease. That's why the American Heart Association even has a stance on it in the first place. It also, for those tired mamas who have heard about cortisol and all of those different things, eating excess sugar can actually cause glandular fatigue. It means that your stress hormones can get way out of whack and your body can live in a state of stress just because of the amount of sugars that you've eaten. And while all of those things seem like, oh, well, those aren't kid issues, the big thing for me when it comes to children is that sugars can actually form antibodies in your system that create an addiction. If you actually go and research it and look it up, there are studies that show pictures side by side of brain scans that show a cocaine addict and somebody who is eating a box of Oreos, and the exact same pleasure centers light up in their brain. So the last thing we want to do is get ourselves addicted to something that isn't increasing our health, that isn't balancing our bodies, and that in the long term can cause all of these various risks. So we talk about the importance of limiting grains and gluten. Now we know why it's important to reduce sugar. Let's also talk about reducing toxins. Did you know that the average person in America ingests 150 pounds of additives every year? And as of 2016, the FDA has approved over 3,000 food additives, preservatives, and coloring, many of which are banned in other countries and throughout the world. That's a big deal, not just because there's chemicals and additives that other people don't use that we're using, but we've actually found that synthetic dyes and artificial flavors offer no benefit to the consumer. There is no nutritional benefit to them whatsoever. They're aesthetically pleasing and they make things look pretty, but the nutritional value is 0. Why does this matter for your kids? Because there's a direct correlation between the increase in additives and food dyes in America and the use of them in our food and the increase in behavioral and learning problems throughout the US. In 2007, a study conducted by the University of Southampton actually showed that 1 serving a day of food dyes or additives created a significant, goodness, my English is all out the window. And I just get so passionate about it, I start tripping over my own words and have a million thoughts. So let me try this one again. In 2007, a study was conducted by the University of Southampton, and it found that 1 serving a day of food dyes or additives actually had a significant increase in the hyperactivity of children and a significantly shorter attention span. So that means 1 serving of food dyes and additives in children ages 3 to 9 had the potential to completely change their behavior. And that's compared to the kids who ate a full whole food lifestyle with no additives in their foods or drinks. And I have to tell you, this is one that I experienced full out, like in my family, full out. Of course, here's the thing. I believe in an 80-20 lifestyle. I believe if we are focusing on our health and wellness and our nutrition 80% of the time, of course there's room to indulge. Nobody wants to live their life always avoiding this, that, and the other, right? And for children especially, they don't want to be the kids who go to the birthday party and they can't have the juice or they can't have the cupcake. And I'm very lucky because sometimes my kids will opt not to, but on the days they don't, wow. I can literally take my child to a birthday party and have her be the sweetest thing and using all her manners and all the thank yous and all of the stuff. And one cupcake within 20 minutes, I've actually gotten to the point where I time it because I have seen the changes in behavior and I'm like, I want to study this. It's about 20 minutes until it hits. And then my child is not being disobedient necessarily, is not being mean. It's not like she's a whole different person, but suddenly it's big emotions over little things. It's really trying to control herself or having trouble trying to control herself and make good choices. It's really those things where she doesn't necessarily know how to interact with other children because her brain starts moving so fast. And then an hour later, she is a hot mess of emotions again because she's hitting that crash. So sugar can really have an impact. And I personally see it all the time. But the other thing that's interesting to me is that those kids who eat sugar all the time, it's very difficult to distinguish. Is it the sugar or is it a behavioral issue? And so a lot of times parents will come to me and say, hey, we are having all these issues. I've tried this medicine. I've tried this. I've tried this. I've tried this. And the first conversation I'm going to have with them is, let's talk about what your children are eating because of studies like this one. And of course, we all know that some products, it's really obvious that maybe they're not healthy or they're not the best for us. But when you dig down to how these artificial dyes and how these different toxins affect our body, that's a big deal. We know that artificial dyes made from petroleum can cause cancer. We know that colors like yellow number 6 and red number 40 have literally been scientifically studied and connected to hyperactivity. Blue number 1 actually has a study that shows us that it's an increased risk of kidney tumors or neurotoxicity in the system. And GMO ingredients are a whole different conversation for a whole different day. But enough talking about all the hard things and the scary things. How do we make this work in our families? We're surrounded by brightly colored labels, 30-second commercials, and I don't know about you, but one watch of the Super Bowl, and I want all of that food. Every craving in my body goes off. I want the pizza. I want the burgers. I don't even like beer, and I'm actually thinking, should I try that beer? But that's the way advertising works, and we're surrounded everywhere by it, and our kids go to classrooms with other children who are eating these things and making these choices. So how do we apply it? The reality is it's not about taking things away from your children. It's about limiting their intake and finding the substitutions that are similar but have less sugar and less toxins. It doesn't mean your kid can never have a cookie. It doesn't mean that they can't have sprinkles on their birthday or on their ice cream. It's about finding the ones that actually achieve the fun of being a kid with the importance of good nutrition. And one of the big questions that I get on this and has been brought up actually when I was writing this is, that's great, but where do I even start to find this stuff? Organic and healthy is also synonymous with being expensive. But I am a woman who lives on a budget, and so I want you to know it is possible. So things like Simple Mills cookies over here on the right-hand side of the screen, those can be found at Whole Foods and Earth Fare, which are known for being a little bit pricier, but they can also be found at Publix and Harris Teeter. So can the almond flour crackers that you see on the left by the same company. Which, by the way, P.S., if you're a Cheez-It fan, those crackers are the bomb. These are made with almond flour. There are no toxins, no colors in it, but it tastes just like a Cheez-It with all the healthy ingredients instead. And then my personal favorite, I have a running joke with my husband that if I ever left him, it would be for Trader Joe, because I love Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's is a cost-effective way to get healthier options and healthier groceries. And these coconut chips that are listed here are from there. You'll also see the fruit roll-ups because every kid loves to play with their food. These bear ones, you can buy them at Costco, you can buy them at Harris Teeter, you can buy them at Aldi, you can buy them at Food Lion. And then, of course, there's always the handy option which for me personally is my last option because I want to make sure I'm choosing my foods. But when I can't find it in a store, you'll see sprinkles like this are found in places like Amazon, where you can source them from a store that may not be in your neighborhood, may not be in your area, but still provides the quality and the price that you need it to be. And then it's also not just about the snack food. Toxins run rampant in our fruits, in our vegetables, and in our meats. So one of the great places to really start to limit your toxins is in the meats that you choose at the grocery store. Looking for free range chicken and eggs that aren't going to be affected by fattening techniques or hormones or antibiotics that have to be given to the animal. 100% grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, wild-caught meats. Those are all a really great one because meat is about the idea that what you eats is what you're taking in. So pigs eat trash, so we want to stay away from pork. But if our fish, our chicken, our beef are eating grass and things that are natural, then we're getting the nutrients from those rather than them getting fed synthetic foods or medications or anything like that. And yes, organic meats can be a little bit more expensive, but again, Aldi, Lidl, Trader Joe's, Food Lion, they have expanded their quality, they've expanded their range, and even they're offering some really great, low-cost, high-quality meats of this kind. All right, so we've talked about limiting things, right? Limiting grains and glutens, reducing sugar, reducing toxins. Now we're going to talk about what do we add. If we limit those things, then we still have to have kids with full bellies and fueled bodies. So we start with eating more vegetables and increasing healthy fats. Fruits should be eaten in moderation, by the way. Fruits are great, but we're trying to reduce sugar. And while natural sugar is better than processed sugar, we still don't want to eat an entire watermelon. Low glycemic index fruits are really the ones we want to concentrate. These are the ones that process differently through the body, and it takes longer for the body to use the amount of sugar. So while the sugar amount's a little bit higher, it actually lasts throughout the day versus creating the spike and crash. What are low glycemic fruits? Low glycemic fruits are anything that ends in berry, green apples, and green tipped bananas. What does that mean, green tipped bananas? It means that they should have a little green on each end, and they should be eaten as a once in a while treat. The more yellow a banana becomes, the higher the sugar content. And if you don't believe me that sugar is rampant in fruits, we said that the average child should have no more than 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. One large apple has 6 teaspoons. One medium banana with green tips, 3.5. 1 cup of grapes, 6 teaspoons. So for those of us who think an apple a day will keep the doctor away, it has that potential, but 3 apples a day are a whole different conversation. So how do we get more vegetables when we know that foods are out there and there's always a conversation about how are foods toxic? What foods should I eat? Do I have to eat organic? Organic is expensive. Well, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And that is, in order to get more vegetables on our plate, it doesn't have to be expensive. We can explore new foods and do it in a cost-effective way when we learn about the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. The Environmental Working Group creates a chart every year based on studying various farms throughout the US and their pesticide practices. The Dirty Dozen are the fruits and vegetables that have the most permeable skins and require the most pesticides when grown. Things like strawberries, tomatoes, potatoes, bell peppers, pears, things that have a thin skin on the outside, so those pesticides tend to seep on the inside, or things that we eat the skin of, like tomatoes and sweet bell peppers. So we really want to be careful with those foods. Those are the foods that if we're going to start to make changes, we want to get those in the organics. However, we don't want to break the bank. So there are other vegetables that we can add to our diet, that can be bought more conventionally with less risk of toxins. Those are things like sweet corn, avocados, pineapple, honeydew melon, kiwi, grapefruit, papayas, all the things that have these really thick skins so the pesticides aren't going to get inside, or things like asparagus and onions that bugs don't have a lot of interest in, so they tend to be really low in pesticides. This list is a great list. I actually, when I first started out making health changes in my life, I am that nerd, and I went and had it made in the side of some card and laminated and stuck it in my wallet. Because to be honest, at that time, I was living on such a budget in my life. I was still single. I was trying to figure everything out, and I had spent so much on medical bills, I honestly could barely pay my rent. So the idea of picking an organic food had to come down to this. If I really wanted peas with my dinner, I knew I could buy them conventional. And if I really wanted apples, I knew that the choice I needed to make was organic. Again, it's not about being ashamed or feeling terrible about the choices we've made before. It's about finding the choices that work to make change, but still fit the lifestyle we're in. And for me, this was a game changer. So we know we need to limit glutens and grains, reduce our sugars, reduce our toxins, and eat more vegetables. But the last one that's important for us and our children is increasing our healthy fat. Healthy fat is actually a source of fuel for the body. It comes in things like avocados, fish, seeds, nuts, and it reduces cholesterol and triglyceride levels in adults. It also can help prevent clotting. And those are really important things in the long term, right? Especially for children. We don't want our kids to grow up and have heart attacks and risk of disease because of their cholesterol or because they're at risk for blood clots. But right now, that's more of a you and me thing. When it comes to our kids, and right now in the short term, the biggest important thing about healthy fat is it gives energy and fuel for the body to burn. In the short version, when our kids eat healthy fat, that's what their body burns, and it keeps them fuller for longer. Carbohydrates and sugars burn very, very quickly. So when we're giving kids an apple as a snack, they're not actually getting the fuel that's going to sustain them all day. It'll give them a short boost of energy, 6 teaspoons of sugar worth, and then they'll be asking for another snack 10 minutes from now. But when we can give them something like trail mix, where it has multiple nuts, maybe some coconut and some protein in there with maybe almonds or peanuts, now they're getting proteins and healthy fat, which is fuel for their body and is going to get them through the day. So when we remove grains and glutens and reduce our sugars, we increase our healthy fat, and our body uses that as the fuel to keep us fuller longer and give kids the energy they need to run around and do the things that they're designed to do, like imagine and play. And if you're not familiar with healthy fat, here's a big long list for you. Things like coconut oil, olive oil, fish oil, hemp seeds and flax seeds, avocados, pretty much all nuts have healthy fat in them in some way, and so do seeds. Coconut is a good one. My kids love coconut because coconut chips, roasted coconut, taste like candy. It does have that sweetness of sugar, but it also has the benefit of healthy fat. Butter, cheese, yogurt, nut butters, almond butter, cashew butter, things of that nature. Those all have components of healthy fat, and they're easy and fun for kids, especially the nut butters, when they can dip and they can spread and they can play. Because food is oftentimes as much a sensory experience for children as it is a taste experience. So your time is valuable, and I really want to respect that. Let me really quickly sum it all up. 1, when we're eating for children and we're making it healthy eating, we limit grains and gluten. 2, we as their parents help them to reduce sugar, giving them alternatives to the sugary, color-laden stuff that's on the shelves, and helping them find the things that they still enjoy, but reduce those sugar content and reduce those toxins. And then we encourage them to eat more vegetables, putting vegetables in front of them and giving them an opportunity to try new things. And we also increase their healthy fats, making sure we're cooking in things like coconut oil, or we're sauteing our vegetables in olive oil, or maybe even just drizzling it over a salad, or doing nut butter with apple slices or nut butter with celery as a snack to really give them the fuel that their body needs. All right. I could talk about this for hours and days on end. This is where my heart's passion lies, because when I was sick, nobody had ever taught me these things. And now I realize it's not as difficult to be in balance as we would think it is. We can make the little changes along the way. And that just always interests me. And I could nerd out about this. I mean, like I said earlier, I've got a doctorate and a bunch of degrees, and yet I still choose to go back to school. Because it's an ever learning process for me. But for those of you who are doing this on your lunch break and joining me in this conversation, I've talked enough. Now it's your turn. Tell me, what questions do you have? What can I answer for you? What did you learn today? Is there anything that sort of caught you off guard, or you maybe did a, wow, I've never thought of it like that moment?